fellowship is this idea of being in relationship together. So the Greek word for that is about us being in relationship. You cannot be in relationship with somebody who you are shoulder to shoulder with in a pew who you haven't had any in-depth conversation with.
I think that's the one thing with a lot of churches is like, yeah, like when you're there, they'll be like, okay, take the next 30 seconds to like introduce yourself to someone else. But like a lot of churches don't go farther than that.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's very superficial. Like, hey, Paul, how was work last week? Cool. Glad to see you. Back to silence. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, again, I've said this multiple times. I'll say it again. You can go on a Sunday morning to a building where people are praising Jesus together. This is not biblically defined as fellowship. If I told you I went to a movie with a friend, right? And after the movie was over, we immediately, we may have talked for 30 seconds about how we liked the movie, and then we immediately went home. Did we like have like a fun fellowshipping, hanging out, enjoyable type time together? We might have enjoyed ourselves, but like that's not like real friendship or relationship.
You're not stirring each other up. You're not encouraging building.
Because you're sitting in silence. Well, in church, you're doing the same thing. There just happens to be a human live there instead of a video. So we know that fellowship is some, in large aspect, having conversation together and being around each other, in proximity to each other on a very regular basis. So we know that, go.
So I was going to say, so let me ask you, when you tell someone that like, hey, I don't go to like a regular corporate church on a Sunday, why did they get all, like, why did their feathers get ruffled up?
Yeah, so what Matthew's referring to is I don't go to an institutional church on Sundays.
Neither do I.
Neither does he. And we like I do a lot of our fellowship together. But so the reason that people get upset in the past, part of that I will blame on me because I just did not word it in a way that was like chill. I worded it in a way that seemed almost passive aggressive. So I'll take partial responsibility in the past. To this day, though, I solve those problems and I don't word it in that way at all. Actually, I almost intentionally try to skate out of the conversation in any way possible because unless you're getting a long form podcast style like this, where we can actually have like a full in-depth conversation, it's going to do nothing almost ever to ruffle feathers. So back to your question, why does it ruffle feathers? Well, I think that when you say that you don't do what they do, this goes with anything. People immediately hear you say, oh, what I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah.
No, like, you're not that big of a deal. I'm not talking about you. Like, none of this has anything to do with you. You just asked what I'm doing, so I'm answering your question. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't watch any secular TV, movies, music. No secular anything. I don't drink any alcohol. That does not make me better than anybody who does those things. I just have a conviction to not do those things. But when I say that I don't do those things, I have had people immediately backlash, like, well, there's nothing wrong with me doing it. Like, it's not a sin. I'm like, I didn't say anything about you. Like, I'm not talking about you. You just asked about my convictions. And same thing here is people hear you say what you're doing is wrong. So I think that people get upset because of that, but also because something deep down in them knows that what they're defining as fellowship is not in fullness fellowship. Now, one of the dilemmas that we have as well is people, your question initially was about, finding the perfect church, or can we create a perfect church? I think people have this expectation that they're going to go to a new church, especially getting out of a bad church or a church that they had a bad experience with. And they'll go into a new church and they think that everybody's just going to be like these magical angel robots.
Yeah.
They're not. Like, they're still humans and they still suck, just like your old church sucked, and your new church will suck too.
Yeah.
And the reason it's going to suck is because you're there and other people are there. So, like, by nature, it's going to have problems. On top of that, if you are a church hopper where you just can't find the right church and just church hopping, 9 times out of 10, not always, but 9 times out of 10, you are probably the problem. It's actually not everybody around you. And they are probably, not perfect either, but you are probably the problem. If you have to keep church hopping because no church is right, you're what's not right.
Well, I know people that are like that, but they're really like, they're very charismatic on that side, and they'll say, well, I really feel like Holy Spirit.
Right.
And some of these people, like, they really love the Lord and they're really pursuing them. So when they say, like, hey, I really feel like, from Holy Spirit, this isn't the church, and they just keep hopping around, I can see maybe some validity in that, but
this idea of I'm just gonna like church hop because God led me to. Okay, so when I've talked to like theologically sound people, what they'll say is, well, somebody like Paul in the Bible church hopped, so you can't tell me that I'm supposed to be planted because, like, a lot of churchanese people will say, well, you're supposed to be planted, like you got to be planted to your church. Okay, both are right. You should be planted and stay consistently and intentional with one group of people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true. So what about Paul? Was he contradicting his own thing? No. He has an entirely different role than you being part of a congregation. He is an apostle that's going from place to place to place, which if you go to the fivefold, Ephesians 4:11, God gave some as apostles, prophets, teachers, pastors, evangelists, and he gave them for the equipping of the saints, for the work of the ministry, all that fun stuff. I believe everybody's part of the fivefold. Some people argue that only certain people are part of the fivefold, and then everybody else is just the saints who are being equipped by those fivefold. I would argue we're all part of the fivefold.
Yeah.
And me as, let's say I'm a teacher, that you as an evangelist, you're going to edify me by you equipping me in evangelism. I'm going to equip you in teaching. So that's what, again, it really doesn't matter what you believe. But for the people who do believe that there's only certain people who are in the fivefold and the rest are just like laymen, they're just the ding-dongs who go to church and stuff like that, they have one really compelling aspect of that. And they believe that the people who are in those fivefold, so again, let's say 20% are part of the fivefold, 80% are just to get equipped to do the work of the ministry. Let's assume that's the case for a second. If that's the case, the belief is that those 20% should always be traveling. So I should go to this person's church, equip them, and then go to another church and equip them in how to do, let's say it's evangelism. And you equip that church in evangelism. Then you go to another church and equip that church in evangelism. So their job is to equip that local congregation and how to walk out obedience to whatever the fivefold gifting is. Very enticing thought. I'm not married to it, but I really like the principle of these people who are really well equipped. Let's use names. Francis Champ, Todd White, Dan Moeller.
Yeah.
These people are always traveling because they're here to equip all of the saints for the work of the ministry. I like that a lot. So regardless of whether everybody's part of it or it's just some people, I believe the people who have been extra gifted, maybe like the 5 talent people, I believe that those people should definitely be doing that. So back to charismatic dude who's like, I'm church hopping because this doctrine was wrong, those people were mean to me, etc. You are wrong. Again, if you're the one who's teaching people and it's not coming from these people are bad, then it's okay. But if it's because these people are bad and I don't like this teaching, then it's a problem. You can't keep church hopping because you don't like the theology. Every church has wrong theology.
Yeah.
I have wrong theology. We all have wrong theology. If it's a main tenet of the faith, they don't believe in the gospel. They don't believe in a bodily resurrection. They don't believe in Jesus' death on a cross. Yes, leave the church immediately. Confront the pastor about it, and then leave the church immediately. But if it's not those things, and they just have a different view on eschatology, who cares? Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Okay.